we will start. Hi everyone, and thank you for coming and welcome to live session number 136 of my weekly live sessions. So it means that for the last 136 weeks, I am here every week talking about a subject related to the engineering qualification validation in Australia and other subjects about engineering. And I think that next week I'm going to do a live session about how to get a job as an engineer here in Australia, because there's a lot of questions that people send to me saying that they've got a lot of experience, but they are somehow struggling to get a job here in Australia. So I think that it's a very good subject that we can have a chat, more like a chat, not probably like question and answers. Obviously, if you guys have questions, I will be answering, but it's probably going to be more like a chat. And tonight I'm going to talk about common questions during the validation process, questions that I received during my free online workshop, and questions that I receive pretty much every day. I receive questions. So there's lots of questions. Well, I don't know, probably more than 70 or 80. Tonight I won't be able to cover all of them, but I'll cover some of them. But first, for those that don't know me, my name is Gerson Ida. I'm the founder of the website www.engineersinaustralia.com, a website that I created to share information about engineering qualification validation here in Australia. And also I share information about workplace health and safety, environmental management, and how to get a job as an engineer in Australia. So tonight we're going to talk about common questions. And as I mentioned, during my free online workshop, I received lots of questions. And if you haven't registered yet to the workshop, the next workshop is going to happen in March, starting on the 6th of March, and it's going to run for the whole week. So 1 week of a lot of content that I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to start your validation application process. And I'm going to actually paste the link for you guys to make your enrollment. Your registration to the workshop is free. It's going to be 100% online. Those ones on Instagram, you can, after the live session, you can go to my profile, and there is a link in my profile, and you can do your registration in there. Those ones in Facebook, I will type in the link so you guys can register there, engineersinaustralia.com/free workshop. So that's the link for you to register. Very important that once you register it, once you submit your registration, you check your email inbox and making sure that you get my confirmation email with your registration. Okay? All right, so first question that I usually get, so many questions here. I answered some last week, so I don't want to repeat. A very common question that I receive is, because of COVID, is there any delay on the assessment done by Engineers Australia? Obviously, I don't work in Engineers Australia. The information that I have is because I've got students of my mentoring program that they applied, and then they tell me how long did it take for them to get their assessment done. And other engineers as well, that they let me know. So you may or may not know, but there are actually two ways that you can apply. You can apply for the standard process, which you don't pay any extra fee, and then Engineers Australia will take probably now between 6 weeks up until it can take up until 12 weeks, even 16 weeks. So that is if you don't really pay any extra fee. If you are in a rush, if you want your process to be completed quickly, then you can pay what they call fast track. So for those ones that went to Disneyland, if you don't want to be waiting for the long lines, then you pay that extra fee, and then you can kind of skip the line, and then you go to the front, and it's going to be much quicker. Instead of waiting 3 hours, you go there, and in half an hour you go there. So that's the same process with Engineers Australia. There is this fast track. You pay around $300 or $310 or $320 extra, and then your process is usually finalized within 30 days. Can take 4, 5, 6 weeks, but usually it's about 30 days. But then if you don't pay the fast track with Engineers Australia, your process can take 6, 8, even 12, 16 weeks. The same question or similar question if I recommend using the fast track process. Obviously, it depends on your time frame. Some people, they have some time constraints, and then they need to get their validation really quickly. If you are one of those, obviously, then I strongly encourage you to get fast track. But if you're not in a rush, you can wait 2, 3, 4 months. Then, you save yourself $310 or $15, and then you don't need to pay fast track. There's this question here that I received from an engineer from Brazil, because the question came in Portuguese. It's a very interesting question. It's a question about restrictions after being validated. So the question is, I'll try to translate here. Once I have my qualification validated by Engineers Australia, can I work as an engineer? That's a very good question. And you need to understand that in this question, there are two aspects. One aspect is that the validation of your engineering degree. So that's one thing. The other thing is about your permission to work in Australia, which is a separate thing. So one thing is with Engineers Australia, they're going to assess your skills and competencies to see if it is equivalent to an Australian qualification, and then we'll give a positive or obviously a negative assessment. Even if you are assessed positively, you are approved, your skills and degrees, they are recognized as being similar to one Australian degree. It doesn't mean that you can start working as an engineer, because to work here in Australia, you need a visa that allows you to work. There are so many types of visas that allows you to work. I'm not a registered migration agent, so I cannot give advice on this, but I was already an international student and I could work 20 hours a week. I was already holder of a temporary visa, 457 visa at that time, and I could work as many hours as I could. And obviously, I managed to become a permanent resident, and then obviously I could work as many hours as I wanted to, and now I'm a citizen. Obviously, I can work whatever hours I can. But just to illustrate that validation is one thing, and then work is a different thing, because you need to get permission to work. But let's assume that you have a permission to work. Let's say that you are an international student and your visa condition is 20 hours a week. So obviously, once you validate your qualification, it doesn't mean that automatically you're going to get a job. You need to apply for a job, you need to find a job, you need to apply for a job, and you need to be successful in that application. However, with your engineering degree validated by Engineers Australia, you become more competitive in the recruitment process. And why is that? Because obviously when companies, they advertise the positions, there's a lot of people that apply to those positions. Even in our organization, when we advertise for an engineer, sometimes we get 30, 40, 50, 60 applications, and you just need one, but then you're going to shortlist, trying to interview maybe 4 or 5, which means that let's say that you got 50 applications, which means that 45 you're going to discard, and then you're going to ask 5 people to attend a professional interview. So which means that 5 out of 50, it's a very competitive market. So which means that if you are not validated, your chances probably are not going to be very good, especially in the organization that we work, that I work. We usually engage engineers that are validated, and because we are in Queensland, depending on the level of the position that we are recruiting, we also ask for engineers to be RPEQ, a Registered Professional Engineer of Queensland. So validation is very important because it will give you a difference, a competitive edge against others that are not validated. The other common question that I receive is about the RSEA, the Relevant Skilled Employment Assessment. This is a service that Engineers Australia, they also provide to validate your work experience, and that will help in your points with your migration process. So it is more like a migration process. It's not about validation of your qualification. It's the validation or recognition of your work experience. So because it's a migration purpose and migration advice, I'm not allowed to do that because I'm not a registered migration agent. But the booklet, Migration Skills Assessment booklet from Engineers Australia, there is a session that talks about the RSEA, so I encourage you to read, and it will explain what you need to do and what sort of documentation you need to do, the primary and the secondary documentation. And if you have questions, please feel free to send your questions in the comments. There is one question here in YouTube. Thank you very much, Ian. Hi, where can I find a guideline or different steps to validate my degree? So that's a very good question, Ian. And what I'll do, I'm going to show you actually those ones on Instagram. Sorry, but you won't be able to see this. But I will show for those ones that are watching on YouTube and Facebook. So what you need to do, you just need to go to Engineers Australia website, engineersaustralia.org.au. So once you go to Engineers Australia website, you go to For Migrants, and then scroll down a little bit, you will find Migration Skills Assessment. And once you click in that, you will see Skills Assessment Quick Guide. And then the first link, read the Migration Skills Assessment booklet. So that is the Migration Skills Assessment booklet from Engineers Australia. And that's a PDF. And I certainly encourage you guys to read very carefully this booklet. Okay. Okay, Ian. So I think it's pretty straightforward. I'll copy this link and I'll paste in YouTube and Facebook. I'm not sure in Facebook it's not going to work, but yeah, paste it in YouTube. All right. So hopefully that works. And Ian, if you click on the link above in the comments in YouTube, you will be able to register to my free online workshop that I'm going to do in March, beginning of March, where in 1 week I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to start your validation process with a lot of details. It's 1 week with a lot of contents, a lot of live sessions, videos with the content, and a step-by-step for you to start your application process. So I encourage you to register to the event that's going to happen in starting on the 6th of March at 10 a.m. Brisbane time. All right, I'll check other questions there. That's another very interesting question that I usually receive. What's the difference between stage 1 of membership and the migration skills assessment? So both are processes from Engineers Australia, and both are to recognize your engineering degree. The only difference is that migration skills assessment process, obviously it's for migration purposes, it's self-explanatory. And stage 1 of membership eligibility, it recognizes also your qualification, but it does not have a migration purpose. So if you, for some whatever reason, you are not after a migration purpose, then you can apply for stage 1 of membership eligibility. If you are a permanent resident, or if you have applied already for a permanent residency visa and you're just waiting, or if you just want, you have a temporary visa here, you don't want to become a permanent resident, you just want to validate your qualification and then work as an engineer because the company or the sponsor is asking for whatever, then you can do stage 1 of membership eligibility. And are they the same? They're not quite the same. They're very, very similar. You still need to provide your CV. The stage 1 of membership, you need to provide what they call a verified CV. If you don't have verified CV, then you got to have your reference letters. You also got to provide your CPD, your 3 career episodes, and your summary statement as well. The same 16 competencies, they apply for both processes, and the number of words in each career episodes is very similar as well. So, and there is a slightly difference in English requirements, especially if you are applying under the stage 1 of membership eligibility. But both, they are for to recognize your qualification here in Australia. One with migration purpose, which is the MSA, Migration Skills Assessment. And the other one, stage 1 of membership eligibility, does not have migration purpose. Yeah, the other question, and I'm conscious of time. I know that I try to keep these live sessions to half an hour. What kind of project can I use as a career episode? Yeah, that's a very common question as well. And I touched a little bit in the last live session that when you choose your experience to write your career episode, It's very critical. It's one of the critical aspects of your process because you need to make sure that you choose the right experience, especially because the engineering experience in some countries, sometimes they are not the same as the engineering experience here in Australia. A very good example is the civil engineer. Civil engineer in Brazil, I'm from Brazil, so I know what civil engineers do in Brazil. And because I'm working as a civil engineer here in Australia for the last, for how long already? Almost 13 years. I know what a civil engineer they do here in Australia, and they quite different. So sometimes civil engineers that they have a lot of work experience in your home country, sometimes those projects are not good to be used here in Australia. So what you need to do, you need to go to the Australian Bureau of Statistics website. I'm probably going to show again. So it's like these live sessions, sometimes they work like a tutorial because I actually show you what you need to do, which I believe it's probably useful for you. If you guys like when I do this sort of a tutorial, yeah, let me know in the comments. But what you need to do is you go to the, or you can Google ANZ SEO engineer, and then you will find here probably in the first is the site from ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics. And then once you click in there, you then go to the section that contains the subsections. So for example, civil engineering professionals. Under the civil engineering professionals, you will find civil engineer. So this definition from the ANZ SEO, Australian and New Zealand standard classification of occupations. This is very important. So you go to civil engineer, and that's the code that you will choose when you do your application. According to Engineers Australia, civil engineers, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the civil engineers, they plan, design, they organize and oversee the construction and operation of dams, bridges, pipelines, gas and water supply schemes, sewerage systems, airports, and other civil engineering projects. So sometimes people get confused about civil engineering projects. Civil engineering projects, they more like infrastructure projects. Sometimes people from other countries, they think that, let's say, for example, when I was working as a civil engineer in Brazil, I was doing lots of refurbishments and fit outs of commercial buildings and shops as well. But this is not a civil engineering project. This is more like a building project. And builders, they do this here, not civil engineers. So if you use examples like this, you're probably going to have difficulties in having your experience being accepted by Engineers Australia. So in those cases, it's not the end of the world. You can go back to your academic engineering experience and use some of your engineering experiences from university. Perhaps as a civil engineer, when you did your subject about structural analysis or structural theory, you can use the assignment that you did in that subject. Perhaps your final assessment, your TCC, those ones from Brazil, they will know, your trabalho de conclusão de curso, you can use that one there. If it matches with this definition, you can use that as your career episode. Or whatever other subject, especially in the design area. If you design a structure, if you design a water pipeline, if you designed a dam or a bridge or a water treatment plant, those sort of things, or road, if you designed a road, then you can use those examples as your career episodes. And also they need to be complex in nature, because remember, you have 16 competencies that you need to address. And if the examples are not complex, you will probably going to have difficulties to address all the 16 competencies. All right. Okay, so let's probably going to talk about a last question, because we're already in the half an hour mark. I'm going to check if is there any question there. Yeah, no question there, no question in Facebook as well. Yeah, the other question, yeah, it's about this question. I'm probably going to talk next week when I talk about jobs, where to look for jobs in the area. So I'll probably talk next week. The other common question is that, especially with pandemic and the borders being closed, a lot of people ask me if they could validate their qualification from the home country. This person was in Brazil, and he was asking me if he could do the whole process from Brazil. And the good news is, yes, you can do the whole process from outside of Australia, regardless where you are. If you are in Brazil or Colombia or Argentina or India, Philippines, Qatar, Egypt, got a lot of people from those areas. So you can do that. Where are you from? Perhaps I'm curious now. Those ones that are live here with me, are you guys from Australia? Are you guys from Brazil? Are you guys from other places? But you can validate and do the whole process from a home country, especially if you are working already in the area. So you are making your money, and then you can dedicate a little bit of time for your validation. The important thing is that your English needs to be proficient, because you need to do an English test, and without having the minimum grade in English, you're not going to be able to apply with Engineers Australia. So it's important that if your English is not very good, it's a good idea to attend my live sessions, because even though I'm Brazilian, I speak Portuguese, obviously, but I do these sessions in English. Even today, one person was talking to me, and he said that his English wasn't very good. But I said, well, because your English is not very good, you should attend my live sessions and start listening to things in English, so your listening can improve. My English obviously is not native. I'm not a native English speaker, but listening to whatever English is better than not listening at all. So, but you can do the whole process. You will have to sit your English test somewhere in your country, which is authorized by either IELTS, TOEFL, or PTE. And also you have to write all your reports in English as well. Hi, Miguel. Good morning from Brazil. Yeah, thank you very much for waking up early. It's 8:05 in Brazil. Everson, yeah, thank you very much. He's saying that he's a civil engineer, and he is planning to write one of the career episodes about pathologies in civil construction. He's asking, that is not listed in the ANZ SEO. Am I going to have any problems? The that depends on the pathologies. I remember that when I was studying at university, we were studying pathologies in asphalt, pathologies in concrete, etc. If you're just describing the pathology, characterizing the pathology, probably is not a very good idea. It's important that you analyze the pathology. If the pathology, let's say that you're doing pathology in a reinforced concrete structure, and then part of your pathology career episode, you will have an analysis of that pathology by doing some design. So how can I, if this concrete structure is cracked, for example, and then I want to analyze the structural capacity of that structure. And then I do all my calculations and analysis, and I put some loadings or simulate some loadings, and then I'll calculate to see the strength or the weakness of that structure. If you do that, you probably have a good case. But if you're just describing pathology, for example, honeycombing of reinforced concrete. Honeycombing is when you've got some cancro in the concreto. So probably, and then you described that the causes was probably because people didn't, or the mix was not right, or people didn't vibrate enough, etc., etc., etc. So if you're just describing that process, it's probably not very strong. You need to have a little bit more in-depth analysis and calculations with that pathology. Okay. All right. So for those ones that joined a little bit later, make sure that if you haven't registered to my free online workshop yet, that's going to start in March, especially those ones in Instagram, you go to my bio and there is a link. You can register it for free to participate in the free online workshop that in 1 week in March, I will teach you everything you need to know so you can start your validation process straight away. Making sure that once you submit your application, you will receive an email confirming your registration. If you haven't received my email, it's because it probably went to the junk mail box. So it's a good idea to check your junk mail box as well. All right. Yes, I will have to stop. But I would like to thank you guys very much. And next week, Sunday, 8:30 p.m. Brisbane time, I'm going to talk in my live session about some tips and hints how to get a professional job here in Australia. So I hope that this information tonight have helped you to understand a little bit more the validation process here in Australia. And I hope to see you again next Sunday, 8:30 p.m. Brisbane time, where I'm going to talk about tips and hints to increase your chances to get a professional job as an engineer here in Australia. All right. Thank you very much and have a very good night. Bye-bye.